Good morning, San Diego. Happy Sunday to everybody out there. Nice little NFL Sunday. Coming off of a college football Saturday, we are back on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. Taking up to some NFL football today as we get started with the, I don't know, what week are we in at this point? Week 8? Week 9? One of the two. But it's been a couple of weeks. It's been almost a month since I've been on the air on a Sunday. We've had multiple things preempting me. Started with traveling with USD football 2 weeks in a row. Went to North Dakota with the team. Went to Des Moines, Iowa with the team as they took on North Dakota and Drake on the road in back-to-back weeks. That was at the end of September. And then so far in October, because we have had Padres baseball, and we have had Padres playoff baseball, and we are the home of the NFL with Westwood One and the Westwood One package here on 97 through the Fan, we had to take the morning games, the early morning games. That would be the London games, the international games. So we took that for the last couple of weeks, and now, with no more of those obligations, we have one more to do later on in the year. We're back on the Braden Surprenant Show until the end of the season. So it's a good spot to be. I'm glad we are a part of it right here on 97 through the Fan. Glad that I'm able to hit the airwaves with all of you. And we're going to talk a little bit about what my afternoon or my day was yesterday. We went to go check out some Aztec football as we spent a good portion of the time at a tailgate. But it was good to go out there and tailgate at Snapdragon Stadium and at San Diego State. It sounded like we had some technical issues, but I think we fixed those problems here on the show. So yesterday, my buddy, he's Washington State alum, wanted to go watch the Aztecs play Washington State with them in town. Obviously, they don't get to come down here too often. They will be a little bit more in the Pac-12 days. But Washington State in town to take on the Aztecs on a Saturday night. We've been planning this for a couple of weeks now, for a couple of months. Had the day off, didn't have to work anything for USD for the entire week. Had a little bit of a break with the schedule, which was nice. And so we decided to get out there early and start and do a tailgate and move on with everything, which was fantastic. But when it comes to All right, let's try that again here on 97.3 The Fan. The Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. Some technical difficulties, and that is the major problem with having to run your own show and host your own show is when things break, you have to go off the air to try to fix said problems. And so we had a little bit of a issue transitioning from satellite, the national programming, the national weekend noise that obviously is not that great to deal with, to the local programming. Little thing behind the scene, didn't fire, had to get that off, run a couple of buttons here, and now we are back. Finally back on the Braden Surprenant show. Finally back after being off for a month. It was a month. A month off. Was out of town with USD at the end of September. Did that twice with the Toreros. We had the NFL London games going on. That knocked us off the air as well, but we should be back in action through the rest of the year on the Braden Surprenant show. The only other time will be later on when the NFL decides to play in Germany. I don't know why they would do that. I'm not a huge fan. Well, obviously, being preempted now on the 6 a.m. games that they put out there, that's neither here nor there. But the NFL games, the London games, and the international games, I don't understand why they have those games. I understand their concept is like growing the game, but I think the best way to grow the game is get the youth leagues going in all these other countries. But I guess they need a reason to go out there and play. So you throw them out, throw some NFL games out there in different countries, have the kids learn about the game, take them to a game, make them want to play the game, and then hopefully you could build it up to what they want it to be around the world. But I just don't know if that will ever catch on. But that will be the only other time that we are off the air here on the Braden Surprenant show on Sundays. Again, new to the show, I'm on each and every day with Andy Nelston from 10 to 2, the midday show here on 97.3 The Fan. Talking a lot of Padres baseball on that show. We were talking a lot of Padres baseball on this show as well until the season had ended. We'll talk a little bit about the Padres and kind of some offseason plans or what the offseason might look like, but we got the World Series going on. Dodgers win again last night against the Yankees 4-2. It's a tough World Series to watch when you're a Padres fan, knowing that they had the Dodgers on the ropes in the divisional series. And, based on the way that the New York Mets played against the Dodgers and the way the Yankees are playing now, it's kind of one of those situations that could have been us, but unfortunately it is not. Talking about the teams that are still playing in town because it is their season, San Diego State football went to the game yesterday. For those that were on YouTube, able to watch, again, you can watch us live on YouTube at 97.3 The Fan. Also on the Braden Surprenant Show page on YouTube. You can check out the show and be able to watch it if you're driving around and you get to your destination. Throw it up on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts at the Braden Surprenant Show on Spotify, Apple Music, everything like that. Also have a show on Monday nights now for high school football and other football news and notes. But when talking about the local team in town right now, that'd be the San Diego State Aztecs. Played a game last night against Washington State. Went to the game as a fan. Went and tailgated the game as a fan. And went with a couple of buddies. One of them is a Washington State grad. Obviously, he wanted to go to the game. And so we got tickets to the game and decided to do the tailgate thing. In San Diego, we don't really get to do that too much anymore. And, there's only a limited amount of time that you're going to be able to do it at Snapdragon Stadium before they start developing everything around it. And I just think, especially in California, tailgating is kind of a dying breed. You have the tailgate lot at Petco Park, but it's just not the same since the queue is gone. And so me and my two other buddies were trying to figure out where we're going to go before the game. We wanted to get down there early and have a good time. And, my other friend that's not the Washington State grad, he's a big Penn State fan, so he was worried about how am I going to be able to watch the Penn State game. And so after lots of talk of what are we going to do, how are we going to go to the game, is there going to be a tailgate where we can watch the game, we decided to just do our own. And we decided to be the guys that had the TV in the back of the truck hanging out at the Thrive lot. So that's what we did. It was a fun time. Got to watch the tail end of the TCU game there at the tailgate at the Thrive lot. You have to throw the rock around a little bit. Got some wings. Had some beverages. It was a good time. Everything was great. Got to go inside to the game and watch a pretty good football game between Washington State and San Diego State. Washington State's a good football team. They're 7-1 on the year. Their only loss is to Boise State, who the Aztecs play next. And San Diego State played pretty well. They're playing a lot better than they were a couple of weeks ago. They were coming off a 2-game winning streak. They came into the game 3-3, and they were on the rope. They put Washington State on the ropes a couple of times and had an opportunity to get out of that game with what would have been a major victory and a kind of program-changing victory against the Cougs. Instead, it's just kind of one of those San Diego State Aztec moral victories that they have had so many times in their history. It's like, oh, well, we almost beat the Cougs. Lost by 3. But I will say, I mean, it's looked a lot better. And the way that they've been able to put this together, it's going to take some time. They had all these new players, coming in with a brand new coach and a brand new coaching staff. But they did a good job against the Cougs last night. The problem they ran into, I mean, Danny O'Neal did get hurt early in the game. Javance Johnson that came in after was 4 for 5 for 41 yards. He did what he needed to do after that to keep the game going as a backup quarterback. Danny O'Neal came back in later in the game. They were driving at the end. They were driving up 5 points. It was 26-21. And I want to get the time correct on the clock because it was like later in the game with about 8:31 to go on 3rd and 14 at the Washington State 22. Freshman quarterback throws a pick to Washington State. And that's what really sealed the deal for the Aztecs last night because the only thing you couldn't do was turn the ball over. 3rd and 14 at the Washington State 22. And I know San Diego State's kicker has not been nails throughout the season. But at the 22-yard line, he's looking at a 30-something yard field goal, probably a 39-yard field goal attempt. If you get any type of positive yards out of it, it's under 40-yard field goal. And you're kicking a field goal to go up 8 points with about 7 minutes left in the game. Your defense had been good for the majority of the ball game. They gave up 2 touchdowns in the first half, and then unfortunately gave up the 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. But with an 8-point lead against Washington State, you're thinking, hey, they got to drive down, they got to score, they got to get a 2-point conversion, and then the game is tied at 29. And you're thinking, where are they going to drive down and kick a field goal to win? Or we could potentially win in overtime, and instead San Diego State ends up getting the loss. Couldn't really do anything after that. They ended up turning the ball over again on a punt. They had 3 timeouts left. The chain crew had everything jacked up at the end. The pass interference that was in front of the pick, I do agree. I mean, that was a bad miss. That was definitely pass interference on Washington State. But a missed opportunity for the Aztecs. A couple of calls didn't go their way, but they had the thing right there wrapped up and then couldn't stop them on that first set of downs. And then they finally force a punt. And they're basically desperation mode with no timeouts and 27 seconds on the clock. Went for an all-out block. And they rough Dean Janikowski, the San Diego kid, who didn't like getting hit. I mean, he started to push back, got a personal foul for it. And Coach Dickert did not like that. He was chewing out Dean. But it ended up not mattering because of the 2 personal fouls against the Aztecs. Since it was roughing the kicker, it was an automatic first down. San Diego State didn't get the ball back, and the Cougs improved to 7-1 on the year. San Diego State dropped to 3-4. I thought it was a fun game. I think going to Snapdragon's great. I mean, obviously the field did not look like it was in good shape. It looked like they were playing on the beach. I don't know how you fix that problem. I know that's been a recurring problem. A lot of Washington State people were commenting on that on social media. What kind of playing surface are they playing on right now? And now they don't have soccer anymore to worry about until the beginning of next season. But you're going to add a men's soccer team with an MLS team. You already have the Wave. Rugby plays there. You got the Aztecs playing there for football. They do bring in some of their other sports out there to play. And you want to know what the status of the field's going to be. I don't like talking about the field too much. I think the grounds crew guys down there are probably doing the best job that they possibly can. I think you're having a ton of events down there on the field. And as somebody that has fortunately gotten to play at Qualcomm when it was there, that field wasn't very good either with the natural grass based on all the events that were happening at Qualcomm Stadium back in the day as well. So I don't know how they're going to fix that problem. I don't really want it to see it be turf, but it's a lot of activity on the grass and high level activity on the grass. It's not like a baseball game where they're just on the grass. In baseball it's different. They're not on the grass all the time like they are in football, tearing it up with 22 members of both teams out on the field at the same time. I think the environment is good. But the problem is the students don't stay very long. And I saw the tweet by Matt Scraby last night about this would be a great place. If they could get some people to show up, it'd be a great place to play. It would, but it's such a tough battle for San Diego State right now because you are a group of 6 school. That's what you are. You're a group of 6 school in a big city like San Diego. It's got a lot to do with a lot of transplants that aren't necessarily San Diego State Aztec alum who watch their own colleges or come from other places that have their own college football fandom that is used to watching the Big Ten and the Pac-12, the previous Pac-12, the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, and then you got the Aztecs. And it's currently just not a draw. I like going because I like sports. I think the sell of Aztecs Fast would be good to get people out to games, but they're not at that level yet. They're not there yet. And it's going to be hard to get any type of stars or good players or high-level players out of college or out of high school to go play there because of this NIL world. And that's 2 totally different conversations. But it's an uphill battle for San Diego State to try to get people to go to their football games because in this day and age of college athletics mixed with the environments of the city, mixed with how great the Padres are with the rebuild of San Diego State football, it's going to be a project. And until San Diego State just starts winning games, but not even winning games, they just look exciting offensively, and they're looking a lot better. I think they're looking a lot better than they've had. It's going to be a tough sell to try to get people to go to those games. I think you sell the tailgates. I had a good time doing that. I think the stadium's awesome. But you got to figure out a way to keep the students there, and you got to figure out a way to get people into that building. Washington State is arguably the best team on your schedule coming into town, at least at home, besides Oregon State. And there weren't too many people at the Oregon State game either, and it was homecoming yesterday for the Aztecs. If they didn't have that many people at the Washington State game, there ain't going to be anybody at the New Mexico game, and especially not the Air Force game at the end of the year. It'll be interesting to see what the Aztecs, again, I think they're playing a lot better, but wanted to mention that they are the only team playing right now in San Diego, at least at a major level. So we started off with the show with that. We're going to talk some Padres baseball. We're talking to some college football as well. We're going to dive into the National Football League in the 9 o'clock hour, kind of lead you in as a pre to the NFL. Get your actives and inactive list coming up around 9:15. Lots to get to on the Braden Surprenant Show right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. Got off to a kind of rough start with the technical difficulties, but we are ready to roll. It's been a while since we've been on the air. Mentioned before, thanks again. We got to get the word out that we are back on Sunday mornings. Some USD travel, some London games preempting. We got one more international game that's going to preempt, and there's going to be one weekend where I'm in Texas. And aside from that, we are back and ready to roll through the end of the year. Got to get this World Series over with so we can talk some real Padres offseason. I don't like diving into a lot of the Padres offseason stuff yet while games are still happening. I think it's kind of weird. Well, it's not weird, but it's just, I just feel like it's too, nothing can happen. So you're going to just continue to say the same thing over and over again until at least the World Series ends. And then you got 5 days after the conclusion of the World Series in order to wait before free agency even opens. And then after that, there's only a couple of moves that usually get made before the winter meetings, get a little bit of a bump during the winter meetings, and then it cools down again for the holidays, and then whoever's left over kind of waits a long period of time until right before spring training, and then all of a sudden you get a flurry of moves with spring training. So that's the Padres off-season outlook. It's very interesting with the Padres, too, because the thing that makes these last couple of off-seasons interesting for the San Diego Padres are a couple of things. Number one, it seems like every offseason for the last 3 years has been a very pivotal offseason for the Padres that it's like going to make or break their organization. I said it last year, I said it the year before that, and now it's kind of the same. But I think it's because that you spent all this money on veteran players and these stars, and you're in the window of winning now, and you're up against your budget, right? Because you don't want to go over, even though your overages right now after resetting the luxury tax aren't going to be that big of a problem. But I think all of those factors lay into yet another important year for A.J. Preller this offseason. And last offseason, he crushed it. But last offseason, he had a valuable asset in Juan Soto that was going to bring back a lot of capital in terms of spreading the love to a lot of different positions. Kyle Higashioka was great as a backup catcher pickup that ended up turning into your starting catcher. Multiple pitchers added to your list. You got a couple of players that in Johnny Brito and Randy Vasquez that they're still going to try to work to be part of the rotation. You had Michael King, who had a great year as a starting pitcher for the San Diego Padres. And they've caught lightning in the bottle last couple of years on guys like Michael King and Seth Lugo, right? The guys that were expected to be bullpen guys getting a chance to start. Same thing with Nick Martinez for a little bit as well, although he still is probably better as a bullpen piece than he is as a starting pitcher. But that was a big haul for A.J. Preller, and it worked out. It was a great trade. Other things worked out, too. I mean, a big roll of the dice that Jurickson Profar, who has really only had great years in San Diego, had a great year at $1 million. Rolled the dice on picking up Donovan Solano and David Peralta. It cost you $800,000 and $790,000 this year. And they played well above that as veterans coming off that bench. You got a Rookie of the Year candidate who might win the Rookie of the Year. He's already run some of those. But you had him as part of the conversation. I mean, that was like at the beginning of the year, you were rolling the dice that Jurickson Profar was going to play up to the level of Jurickson Profar and hopefully more. I mean, you got the best year of Jurickson Profar's career. I mean, that is a major roll of the dice and a check mark. You got your rookie that hadn't seen more than like 40 at-bats in Double-A or 40 games, whatever it was, 40-something. He didn't play too much in Double-A, who had never played center field. You were asking him to get to the major leagues and start in center field, a position he's never started before at his age, or at least in his professional career. And that worked out. I mean, those are two gigantic risk moves. You had to take the risk that Michael King was going to be able to go through an entire season as a starting pitcher. You had to take the chance that Kyle Higashioka was going to help you. I mean, there's so many things that needed to go right for the Padres that went right. They sustained some injuries, but they weren't catastrophic injuries. I know Joe Musgrove being down for most of the year, and then at the end, really hurt. Bogarts was out at the beginning part of the year, but he was able to come back. You had a lot of things work out for you. So now the Padres, going into this offseason, it seems again like a very pivotal offseason for the Padres. But I think a lot of it, again, has to do with the fact that everybody's getting a raise on this team. Your estimated 2025 payroll right now is $207 million. Manny Machado's still making $17 million next year, but according to the luxury tax, his luxury tax money, which is different, which is based on his average annual value, that's still the same at $31 million. He's not getting a raise until 2026 when it goes up to $25 million, and then it goes up to $39 million in 2027. Bogart stays the same. Fernando got a bump. He's up to $20 million now. Joe Musgrove's making $20 million, not to pitch next year, but hopefully he gets the rehab needed and we can see him again in 2026. Yu Darvish got a little bit of a bump, but that's going to go down the year after. He's up to $21 million next year. Jake Cronenworth won't get his bump until 2026. Robert Suarez is making $10 million. Plus all the arbitration guys. I mean, you didn't even have to pay for Luis Arraez. Now you got to pay him $14.6 million projected in arbitration. So there's a lot of things working against the Padres right now, but everything comes down to, and everybody that asked me all these questions, and there's some of you in the chat, please keep chatting away, put it in there. If you want to weigh in on the show, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. The biggest takeaway and why it's hard to predict what the Padres are going to do is how much money are they willing to spend. This year it was easy. You knew they weren't going to go over the luxury tax because they didn't want to go over it for a third straight year. They were resetting the budget. That was a lot easier. Now, having an organization that's been above it before, knowing that if they do go over budget, the tax is only on the overages on the budget. But at the same time, what is this new kind of regime in ownership with Katsenda and Grupner compared to Peter Seidler? How much more are they willing to spend compared to what Peter Seidler was willing to spend? We haven't seen that factor either. I could see this going two ways. I could see this going, we're going to stay under the luxury tax again. We're going to try to shed some payroll. We got so lucky. Well, not lucky, but it worked out for us last year. Why do we got to spend all this extra money? We'll let AJ Preller try to find his way to manage to put together a ball club while staying underneath the luxury tax. I could see it going that way. The other way I could see it going is we're going to spend some money and we'll go back over that luxury tax because we got some aging veterans on our team and we got a good squad right now. And now's the time to strike because we don't know what the future is going to be like anyway with players on aging contracts. Let's strike while the iron's hot. And the Padres did that after 2022. They made a big splash in Xander Bogaerts, but they went after Aaron Judge and Trey Turner when they didn't seem like they had enough money. They did have in the back of their mind that they had to deal with the Juan Soto conversation, as obviously that ship then eventually sailed. But I'm curious to see what they decide to do. I mean, and that to me is how much money they're willing to spend is going to determine how they dictate this offseason, which gives us in the radio business not a lot of predictions on what's going to happen in the offseason. If the Padres spend money, anything's on the table. Blake Snell, sure, sign him up. I don't think the Juan Soto deal is ever going to happen because I know Padres fans are like, what's What's it going to be to bring what do you have to do to bring Juan Soto back? Hopefully find a money train in the backyard that just prints dollar bills. I mean, I don't know. That's probably it. Can't really afford a $600 million contract for a guy that's going to get big money. And it points to a good direction of the fact that, thank God, you already signed Fernando Tatis Jr. to a 14-year deal. That contract's going to age like fine wine right now for the San Diego Padres, a lot better than the other aging veterans contracts. So I don't know. I don't know where the Padres are going because I don't know how much they're going to spend. I think there's a couple of ways to get after it. And we'll talk more about that as the show continues, as we continue on these Sundays. Monday nights, though, be sure to tune in to America's Finest Football Show on Monday nights. Talk a lot of high school and college football. Talk some Aztecs football. I host that show from 10 to midnight, trying to get that going a little bit more now that the Padres season is over. Be sure to tune in. If you do not tune into the show live, because it is late, you can listen in podcast form. Find me on social media at B_SURP. You can also find the show, the Braden Surprenant Show, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever it may be. We are there, as well as America's Finest Football Show. So be sure to subscribe to all of those. Subscribe to the YouTube page. You can find me on YouTube at B_SURP, at BSURP. To all of you watching on YouTube, continue the chat going. Want to get your phone calls as well, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. What did you think about the Aztecs last night? Where do you think the Padres should go in the offseason? Talking all of that when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show. Live and local each and every Sunday morning. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Maybe the first hour might be almost over. Show's not over. Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. Thanks again for all of you for joining us this early Sunday morning. It's Sunday. It's not Monday yet. Been used to doing the Monday night football shows, the America's Finest Football Show, each and every Monday night. Following Monday Night Football, there might be a little bit of a in between when it comes to end of the game, some national show, and then back to America's Finest Football Show. But I digress on that. So if you want to hear more of me talking more football Monday nights from 10 to midnight, you can also catch it on podcast form, wherever you get your podcast, America's Finest Football Show, the Braden Surprenant Show. We continue on the Braden Surprenant Show here. We were talking to Padres offseason a little bit, kind of get into the weeds on some of the numbers. There's some people in the chat that are like, oh, hopefully Soto doesn't end up on the Dodgers. Hopefully Blake Snell doesn't end up on the Dodgers. I mean, I would never want to see that, but at the same time, it would just show how dumb baseball is with some of their rules, that they try to like punish the top teams, but the top teams are making so much money that it doesn't even matter on luxury tax. Like, even though they're paying like upwards to like a whole contract or almost a whole payroll in luxury tax penalties, the big organizations make so much money it doesn't even matter. Like, teams like LA could go out there and sign Juan Soto and Blake Snell during the offseason and just have this like insane all-star team battling it out with another all-star team in the New York Yankees. And I'm not sitting here making excuses because the Padres lost. They should have been able to beat that said team, but it's just so different. And to me, like the World Series, and they had a great moment on Friday night. I mean, it's probably better for Dodger fans than anybody else, but they had a walk-off winner with 2 outs, down a run, bases loaded, grand slam for Freddie Freeman in the World Series. That was a pretty big moment in a World Series game. I already said I'm not going to watch a lot of the World Series, but the reality is I don't really have time to watch the World Series with my schedule. I'm just doing other things. And it's not, to me, it's not, I'm going to change my schedule to watch these games World Series. I'm not one of those people that has to buy into the best name brands going after each other in the World Series is the best World Series ever assembled. I'm not a believer in that. I think there's some good storylines in this World Series, but I'm not like itching to go home and watch it at the end of a long day. It doesn't do anything for me because there's no juice. I mean, where's the juice? If either team wins the World Series, it's expected. Where's the juice? You're like watching a TV show that you already know the outcome of the TV show, right? I mean, there's no suspense. There's no, I can't believe this team's going to pull this off. It's not, where is it? Aside from the Tiffany and Company logo and the Dodgers logo, it's like, where is it? I love sports. I don't love two heavyweights going at it. It doesn't do anything for me. There's no underdog story. I saw a couple of the highlights the other day. It's cool. It's a cool way to finish a game. I mean, I had no idea what happened yesterday. I know they won. I know the Dodgers won 4-2, and I know that Ohtani had a subluxation of his shoulder, something that Fernando had in the past. And the Dodgers are confident that Ohtani's going to be fine. That's all. I mean, that's it. What's the incentive for me to watch the World Series? I love football. I'm going to watch football. I'm coaching football. I mean, on Friday night, I was coaching football. I'm not tuning into the World Series. And then when I got home, I'm tuned into the PPR because I want to watch what's going on in high school football. And then Saturday morning, it's like I'm going to watch it on tape delay. And then on Saturday, it's like I got college football to watch. I mean, college football, to me, is way more entertaining than this year's World Series. I'll watch almost every college football game. The World Series, it's all right. I don't like either team. I mean, I'm finding myself now I have to root for the New York Yankees. I mean, there's Super Bowls that I'm like, I just cannot stand both teams. It's going to be sickening watching one of these teams celebrate. I mean, that's where I'm at. And right now, the Yankees are the lesser of two evils. So I guess if they can win a couple of games, they could put it together. But the thing that would make it more entertaining, Blue Meanie in the chat, is if it wasn't the Dodgers. I mean, if that was like any other team against the Yankees, I'm all for it. It's great. If Freddie Freeman hit a walk-off home run, walk-off grand slam for the Atlanta Braves, or even the Philadelphia Phillies over the New York Yankees, I'd be like, all right. But these are literally the two teams that are expected to win every year based on the resources they have. And they've screwed it up more times than not. I find myself interested more in the Rangers-Diamondbacks World Series because somebody's battling. Actually, no, I take that back. It's kind of the same thing. Like I feel like you need a little bit of a favorite, and then you need the underdog. And even though the Rangers in last year's World Series was more of a favorite because they spent a lot of money, they were looking for their first World Series. So at the end of the day, it's like you either had the Diamondbacks who had a Cinderella kind of story last year, which I didn't really want to see them win either because they're a division rival. I mean, I was happy the Rangers won. But you had a team that's never won it before going out there trying to win. I mean, I like those stories. I thought the Cubs-Guardians World Series was awesome in 2016. But at the same time, you had two franchises and fan bases that had never... I mean, some of those people have never seen their team ever win a World Series, right? Because the Cubs hadn't won one in 100 years, and the Guardians hadn't won one in 50 years. And they still haven't won one. But I think there's something about that extra passion you get, that extra juice, more than just corporate America getting their wish and shoving it down your throat. The two teams that, when they make it, all of a sudden, all their diehard fans get priced out, celebrities move in, they all claim to be fans of said team, haven't gone to a game all year, World Series game, yeah, here's my Dodger and Yankee hat, diehard fan, here I am. Can't wait for my beloved Yankees or Dodgers to win. It's just, it doesn't give me the juice. Doesn't give me the juice. I'd say the walk-off grand slam was great. That's great. But it would have been extra if it's like the Washington Nationals trying to upset the world, right? Us against the world. When you got two teams that are like super dominant and they're trying to claim that they have a edge because everybody counted us out, it's such eyewash. I mean, the Dodgers pulling that the whole playoffs was such eyewash. Nobody believed in us. We're the underdogs, us against the world. It's like, are you kidding me? Come on now. Come on now. Didn't get to watch on Friday. I was busy with high school football. Didn't watch yesterday. Was at the Aztec games, watching college football. Next game is Monday. Might have some time Monday to tune in. But you know what? I got fantasy football and Monday Night Football to watch. Then you got Coosa action on Tuesdays. You got the Maction. I mean, college football is great. I think it'd be different maybe if it was like my favorite, like diehard favorite sport. And it's in the fall. I'm on to football now. I mean, I moved on to football at this point. And get ready for Padres offseason. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at on that. I get it. If they gave me a reason to watch. I don't get mesmerized by the stars. That doesn't. It's the juice of the. This team is not supposed to be here, and they're hanging right now with a team that is supposed to win. That's what gets me the juice. It's the battle of the I just like the hat fan bases. It's a good chat. Good comment in the chat. What do you think? 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I mean, I've done it with the Super Bowl, too. I mean, there's some Super Bowls I'm like, I'm not really that interested in this matchup. I could be interested in matchups that don't have, like, the marquee teams in there. I'm not a big fan on it has to be the greatest World Series ever because it's the two most notorious names in the sport narrative. Because that happens in college football too, where it's like, the teams are not that great, but it's like, hey, it's Notre Dame. They were really good when they started putting games on TV. Therefore, they have a lot of fans now. So you must love to watch Notre Dame. You have to love watching Notre Dame. I don't like watching Notre Dame. It's the same thing in college football. Here's our teams. Here's our teams that were the only teams on TV. Therefore, they're the biggest brands in the sport now, which I find so funny. It's like the biggest brands in the sport were the ones that were just happened to be on TV when they started airing games on TV. And that's just the traditional teams now. And they continue to be traditional teams regardless if they're good or not. I mean, Notre Dame is a lot better this year than they've been in years past. But you start looking at college football resumes, I mean, a lot of these schools are getting the benefit of the doubt for their name because they were good in the 60s. I think the same thing could be said about this World Series. It's like, hey, you know what? These two teams, back when there were like 8 teams, were dominating every single year, and they won all these championships. Therefore, we must love watching these two teams battle it out in the championship. Now, you can't force me to like anything. Stop trying to shove that down my throat. I mean, it's not going to work. I think it's okay. It's okay. But it doesn't have that extra juice. It doesn't have that David Goliath, right? I mean, that's why Boogie in the chat is perfect example. That's why March Madness is more fun. You get great stories sometimes, and sometimes the favorites die. It's 100%. You get everything. Get a Cinderella story. That's why March Madness is the biggest, one of the most watched sporting events every single year. That's why people are tuned in and they fill out brackets because anything can happen. Regardless of whoever wins this World Series, it was expected. It's 2 of the top 3 payrolls in Major League Baseball. It was expected. It's nothing shocking. That's like the NBA Finals when it was like for 2 or 3 years, it's either going to be the Warriors or the Cavs, and they're both going to play each other in the finals. It's expected. How great is a TV show when you already know the outcome of the story? It's not very good. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Kathy in L.A., Brandon El Cajon. You start the top of the hour. When we come back, Braden Surprenant Show live and local each every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Starting hour number 2 on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. Talking football with you, Aztec football, talking World Series. I don't think it's got the juice as much, but it does for a lot of people. I mean, there's people that are going to watch the World Series always because it's the World Series. I was telling one of the guys in the chat it might have to do a little bit. I mean, it's just surrounded by sports all the time that sometimes it's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I want to do something else in the meantime. I just think I think a lot of it has to do with coaching too. Like, I'm just so locked into coaching. Try to give them, the most for my players to put them in the best position to potentially win as possible. And so I got extra time. I'm working more times than not, instead of just sitting down, relaxing, and taking in a ball game. That's always fun yesterday to go out to the Aztec game and be able to do that and watch San Diego State play. I think the Aztecs, they're making some progress. It's going to be a little bit more work, but the last couple of weeks they've played a lot better. And they had a freshman quarterback make a freshman quarterback mistake last night after leaving the game earlier but getting hurt. But they got good potential right there in San Diego State. The problem is for the Aztecs is just going to be keeping guys and being able to keep guys on their roster. I mean, you take a Trey White, for example. The guy is leading college football in sacks. Or he was. I mean, relatively close. He's near the top. This kid's from San Diego. Went to East Lake High School. I mean, born and raised. Guys, families here, everything like that. Not a lot of, big time offers out of high school. He got a lot. I mean, he was a stud at East Lake. But he goes to San Diego State and he dominates, right? And to be honest with you, you can't even blame the kid if he decides to leave, and you'd be kind of foolish to not take money if somebody's going to offer you money. But the problem with San Diego State is every time that they're going to get a player, they're going to lose them right now unless they have the NIL. But the problem is like if San Diego State, we're just going to use him as an example. I interviewed him one time when he was in high school. I thought he was a great kid, met his family, super nice people. But let's talk about Trey White for an example. If Trey White, and it's really the open market, if he goes on the open market the way he's been playing, a Power 5 school is going to give him a 6-figure deal. They're going to give him anywhere between $100,000 to a max of $400,000. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now on players that are at schools like San Diego State or even lower, like a Cal Poly, and they go on to bigger schools in the SEC. That's kind of the going rate for some of these players, anywhere in between. And if you're the Aztecs and you want to keep said kid, you're going to have to match said offer. I mean, just like we talk about pros, they're not going to take hometown discounts because even more so in college, there's no guarantee that said college player is going to make it at the next level. So based on the rules, you might as well cash in now. And you honestly cannot blame the individuals or their families for the situation that is in front of them. As a parent, which I am not, how could you tell your child to not take hundreds of thousands of dollars to go do the job or play the sport that they had been playing for since they were 5 years old, when you have taken them to every practice, when you have driven them around all of San Diego and potentially beyond? Football's a little bit different because they don't really have travel ball, but they do have 7-on-7 now. But still, all of the travel ball, all the off-season stuff, all the workouts. I mean, how could you sit there and be like, nah, you can't take, you shouldn't take the money. You would be foolish not to. So even if San Diego State matches whatever he gets offered, and we're just using him as an example because this is going to be a problem again. You cannot justify, if you're San Diego State, giving one defensive lineman $300,000 or $200,000 or even $100,000. You can't do it. Because if he's getting that, what's the quarterback supposed to get? How are you going to get a quarterback in here if some D lineman's getting paid more? And then you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands. There's a lot of good things about name, image, and likeness. There's a lot of good things about the current status of college football because of the ability to pay players to play now. Some of those pros, okay, kids that had been able to sell and be very good at having a different niche, like with YouTube and everything like that, they can now make money off of what they create. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That was what this thing was for, because it was ridiculous that a cross-country runner out of high school that had a great YouTube page about, like, bunnies or something, I mean, you could just make up whatever, had to shut it down because it would be an impermissible benefit to them because it's like, oh, well, we're just paying you a bunch of money for this. So from that perspective, it's good. From the perspective of leveling the playing field, it does level the playing field a little bit, because as much as people want to say the rich keep getting richer, it's like, well, all these big schools can just pay for all these kids. Well, now all these other schools can do the same thing, right? And so now, instead of everybody being at 4 schools, because those 4 schools are the most dominant schools, right? And it was, for a long time, it was Clemson, it was Ohio State, it was Alabama, and then it was some other SEC school at the time. Sometimes it was Georgia, LSU. Somebody else usually came up the map. Every once in a while, Florida State came through the ACC during this college football playoff era. They were getting all the kids. They were getting all the players. And you were willing to be a third-string guy at Alabama because, 1, you were probably getting money anyway. And 2, it's like, well, what am I going to do at all the other schools? But at least I'm going to be at the school that is always in the playoff, the school that gets guys drafted, the school that has all this prowess. I'll buy into the system. And it's like, how do you turn down an offer from Alabama, right? When you're looking at offers as a high school kid and money's not really a big thing. There's a little bit of side hustle money mixed in there that I'm sure schools were handing out. But you look at the SEC schools, like, how do I turn this down? But now, with name, image, and likeness, you got like a school in the Big 12, right? You know, maybe you get a player that is a high-level player that was going to have to sit at Alabama first year and make X amount of dollars when he can make a X plus 1 at a different school and start, even though it's not Alabama. It's like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to get paid and I'm going to play. And you've seen it with college football. College football is wide open this year. It is wide open. I mean, you look at some of the scores from yesterday. You are seeing more and more NFL scores in college football. Still have some blowouts mixed in. I mean, Texas beat Vanderbilt 27-24. When was the last time that was a college score? I mean, that's like Big Ten football. That's a high-scoring Big Ten football game. You got schools like Army and Navy being ranked in the top 25. Although Navy got smoked yesterday. Indiana is ranked in the top 25. They're going to be in the top 10 after they dismantled Washington. Kansas State was a battle last night. SMU won in overtime in a tight ball game against Duke, who was unranked. I mean, you have these tight scores in a lot of different leagues. You have leagues that are just completely turned upside down. I mean, my TCU Horned Frogs won last night against Texas Tech, got the saddle back. Great. Love it. Love the saddle. Love beating Texas Tech. I mean, they were left for dead. They beat Utah and they beat Texas Tech. They're right there for a Big 12 championship appearance. They need a couple things to go their way, but they're right there in striking distance. These gigantic conferences even everything out, too. It's never been more parity in college football than it is right now. So that's some of the pros. Now, some of the cons, obviously, giving an 18-year-old hundreds of thousands of dollars to play football is mind-boggling to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But in a capitalistic society, which I believe in the United States, if somebody's willing to pay you money for a good or a service, you should be allowed to make said money. But there needs to be rules in place. And now if you look at San Diego State, as we kind of wrap this all back into the Aztecs, the current model is not sustainable for schools like San Diego State to be able to compete every single year. It's not. Because you look at, and I saw it in the chat with Boogie, he said, you know what? Freshman quarterback looked good, but he's a freshman, he's developing. Yeah, but if Danny O'Neal looks any better, if he continues, I mean, right now he's looked good. He's looked okay. He's made a lot of freshman mistakes. He's looked okay. He's been okay. He's had some good moments. He's had some bad moments, but he's looked overall okay. If he was tearing it up right now, he'd be as good as gone because there would be already schools calling him. And you know that's happening. You know they're finding ways to contact these players on different teams. They might not be dialing him up or DMing him on social media themselves, but they know, based on recruiting in the past when they were in high school, they know who their high school coaches are. Call up Danny O'Neal's high school coach. Hey, why don't you talk to Danny and tell him to get into the transfer portal? We're going to offer him XYZ. You know that's happening. So for San Diego State to try to build this thing up, and it's got to be difficult. And I think the same thing could be said about Sean Lewis, because if he does a really good job, he's going to be gone anyway, because, you know, he is bought in on this new system and he embraces it. And that's why he says we got to get some more money in here so we could, you know, reward guys like Trey or White. But when you are putting together this program and you're trying to get people to go to games and you're trying to build up and you're trying to get players to play for you and all that stuff, it's not just getting guys to play, it's getting guys to stay. It's just going to be a hard battle for San Diego State unless they, and I think they hopefully will work on, rules and regulations of making this a professional league. It'll be very difficult. Very difficult. So that's some college football for you. We want to dive into some more of your phone calls. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Let's get out to Kathy in Los Angeles. Kathy, weighing in on the Braden Surprenant Show. What's going on?
Hey, Braden. I'm a little confused with this whole salary thing with the players. If Manny Machado is only making a certain amount this year, but he's worth this much, then does that same thing apply to Shohei, that he's only making $2 million this year, but he's worth $70? So does that up their tax dollars too?
How it works with, Shohei is different just because his money it's deferred. So he's still getting paid $70 this year. It's just like all the other money is going to be later where he gets the payment, and then it's a percentage that gets added to his average annual value. So that's why. So he counts for $46 million this year, Shohei Ohtani.
Okay.
Towards the luxury tax. The same thing with Manny Machado. So Manny's getting 17 this year, 25, then 39. His average across the board will be 31 million. That's what gets taxed, or that's what's the number that gets added to your payroll. That would be your tax payroll in order to determine taxes and everything like that.
But then again, like you said, they make so much money, it doesn't really make that much difference how much they have to pay in taxes. So.
Yeah, and again, it's only on overages too. So like whatever they are over, they got to pay, and then there's surcharges in there. I mean, it gets to a point where not even the big teams want to be over the luxury tax for 3 consecutive seasons, just because you're ended up like doubling your payroll by paying your entire payroll twice, but you're paying one of those payrolls to the rest of Major League Baseball. But when you're an organization that has more money than God, you can totally do that. But not every organization is willing to pay an extra $200 million to everybody else in baseball if they get all the way up to that threshold, 3 years in a row. But that doesn't discourage teams after they reset it to go after it again and load up all these contracts. And now everybody's doing the deferred. They're trying to convince with deferred money and trying to finagle it. And it's definitely a game for sure. But these big time teams in baseball, it's almost like when you put in like taxes, right? And tax rules in the middle class has to find ways to pay it, and then everybody else has ways around it with better accountants. That's kind of like the same thing right now in Major League Baseball when it comes to luxury tax.
Okay, and I really hope the Dodgers lose because working up here in LA, I really don't want to have to deal with the aftermath of that if they win the World Series this year.
I believe you on that. I don't want to see the Dodgers win either, but hopefully the only thing that would make this World Series sweet, and Kathy, I appreciate the phone call, Dodgers go up 3-0, and then the Yankees win 4 straight. That'd be kind of sick. The downside of that is you got to wait a longer time to get to Padres offseason mode because you got to wait 5 days after the conclusion of the World Series before you can start signing free agents and doing all that. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Brandon in El Cajon. Brandon, what's going on?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that to cut to the chase, money's going to corrupt all of these sports. It's just it's almost as disappointing as the way the Padres ended the season. They had the Dodgers right there, only had to win one more, and it was like the Chargers collapsing the way they lost.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like that. I mean, the only difference is the Chargers were actually the better team than the Patriots that year at the spot. I think the Padres are probably close in that regard, but in terms of like overall record and everything, I mean, the Dodgers were technically, I'd still think they were probably the favorite in that series. It's very disappointing. I mean, I think you could say the Padres played hard and still let the city down. I think you could say both of those things because that's kind of the feeling that I had at the end of that divisional series.
Yeah, they just those last 2 games, they got to the playoffs by stringing hits together, and then one of them's a double, and then they all started hitting their warning track fly ball outs in those last 2 games. It was just pathetic. Really ended baseball for me this year. I couldn't care less. The money problem is why you have the Dodgers and the Yankees in the world. Well, besides the Padres collapsing, but yeah, it's disappointing. It ended baseball for me.
Yeah, and that kind of happens a lot for a lot of fans. And Brandon, I appreciate the phone call. I think when you are living and dying on every pitch for an entire season, your team gets eliminated. You got that little bit of like, bitterness to you, right? I mean, that's the same thing happened to me with the Chargers when they were in town. It's like I don't want to watch the next couple of weeks, but then enough time would pass and I'd watch the Super Bowl. And same thing happens with other sports. I mean, fans of teams that are eliminated will start focusing on the next team that they root for because the seasons just roll into the next. And so for a lot of San Diego Padres fans, it's football season now. And speaking of football season, when we come back, we do have some actives and inactives to pay attention to for today's Sunday games. Get your fantasy football lineups set. Active and inactive list coming up next. I'm Braden Surprenant. This is the Braden Surprenant Show live and local each every Sunday morning on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each every Sunday morning, talking everything with you. Talking football, talking Padres baseball, talking World Series. Getting closer to kickoff on an NFL Sunday. We got to tune into some actives and inactives for your fantasy teams as we get closer to the morning slate of games. Let's start talking about some of these actives and inactives for NFL Week 8. Fantasy Football Week 8 inactive status for a lot of big names. T. Higgins, Jaden Daniels, and others. Let's get to it. In the morning games, Baltimore's Keaton Mitchell is out with a knee injury. His 21-day window to return is now open. Once he comes back, he could supplant Justice Hill's number 2 running back option. Not a lot for this particular day. Rasheen Ali, running back for Baltimore, is also out with an ankle injury. Given the above news, once Ali can make it back, he may be utilized only on special teams. That is some deep, deep fantasy players for you in Baltimore. Zay Flowers, ankle injury, active. Looks like he'll try to play. Don't be surprised if Rashad Bateman is more effective today than Zay Flowers for Baltimore. In Cincinnati, some big news in the receiving corps. T. Higgins is inactive with a quad injury. His late addition to the injury report on Friday didn't bode well. Andre Iosivas gets his slight uptick in fantasy value, but if you're a T. Higgins owner, get him out of your lineup. He is inactive today with a quad injury. That is now official from the Cincinnati Bengals as they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Jerome Ford and Deshaun Watson are both out. Obviously, Deshaun Watson has been placed on the injured reserve. Jameis Winston will get the chance to hold off Dorian Thompson-Robinson for starting consideration going forward. If you're looking for a quarterback, it'll be Jameis Winston today, starting for the Cleveland Browns. Jerome Ford out with a hamstring injury. Nick Chubb will be spelled by Pierre Strong Jr. in Cleveland. Jamison Williams is out with a suspension. Obviously, he'll miss this week and next. Khalif Raymond and Tim Patrick get value boost. Tim Patrick, San Diego kid. So that's the only one you have to worry about in Detroit. Jacksonville, Travis Etienne Jr. with a hamstring injury is inactive. Tank Bigsby, DeErnest Johnson are once again being asked to step up for the Jacksonville Jaguars. No Travis Etienne Jr. this week. Tua is active. He was potentially going to be active today. That was kind of the rumor of the weekend. He has cleared the league's concussion protocol and will get back in the huddle on Sunday. Tua Tagovailoa is active today for the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill, foot injury. He's also active. Jalen Waddle could be the number 1 receiver option for Tua's return if Hill isn't at 100%. Something to monitor for you in fantasy football. In New England, Jalen Polk is out with a concussion. He remains in the league's concussion protocol. Keyshawn Boot is the safest Patriots receiver at present time. Alan Lazard, New York Jets wide receiver, is inactive today with a chest injury. Even had he played, the Jets didn't trade for Devontae Adams to not throw him the ball as much as possible. So Alan Lazard is, in fact, out for the New York Jets. Dallas Goedert for the Philadelphia Eagles is out with a hamstring injury. Grant Calcaterra gets the call in his stead. No Dallas Goedert for Philadelphia. Bucky Irving has a toe injury for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is an active designation for Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving will play today. He was always fully expected to play, but Sean Tucker is lurking in the background. Mike Evans, hamstring, out. Chris Godwin is done for the year, as we mentioned before. Evans might be back in Week 12 if everything goes well, but he is out with a hamstring injury. Got a lot of different faces and new faces for Baker Mayfield in Tampa the next couple of weeks. Raheem Jarrett, wide receiver, Tampa Bay, knee injury, active this week. He was activated from IR as the Bucs look to restock a depleted wide receiver room. In Tennessee, Will Levis is inactive with a shoulder injury. Mason Rudolph took most of the reps with the first team this week, so this is not a shock. Tajay Spears, hamstring injury, is out. Tony Pollard should get most of the carries with leftover touches going to Julius Chestnut. Taj Spears, out with a hamstring. Biggest news again, Alan Lazard is inactive with a chest injury, and T. Higgins of Cincinnati is out with a quad injury. He is listed as inactive. 1 o'clock games. Curtis Samuel with a pec injury is out. He's targeting Week 9 for a return, but but he has even less value now than Amari Cooper is in Buffalo. Andy Dalton is doubtful with a thumb injury. Expect Bryce Young to start as Dalton recovers from Tuesday's car accident. Jonathan Brooks for Carolina is out with a knee injury. Chuba Hubbard gets to be the main man for the Panthers for at least one more week. Tommy Tremble for Carolina is questionable with a back injury. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver for Carolina, out with a rib injury. Adam Thielen for Carolina, out with a hamstring injury. Carolina does not have a lot of players ready to go for today in the offensive side of the ball. Deontay Johnson's out. Adam Thielen's out. Doubtful is their quarterback, Andy Dalton. Expect Bryce Young to play. Jonathan Brooks is out with a knee injury at running back. Chuba Hubbard is expected to get most of the carries for the Carolina Panthers. In Kansas City, Juju Smith-Schuster out with a hamstring injury. At least he's not on the IR. Having just arrived in town, DeAndre Hopkins will suit up alongside Xavier Worthy. In L.A., Will Dissly of the Chargers is questionable. Got 8 passes last week with Hurst, but is likely to be a game-time decision this afternoon. Hayden Hurst also is questionable with a groin injury. If both Hurst and Will Dissly sit, Eric Tomlinson could be a tight end sleeper this week if you're really desperate for a tight end. Other Los Angeles Charger products that are inactive or doubtful. DJ Shark Jr. was on the IR heading into the week and was not activated in time to play, and his team could have used DJ Chark this week. He's inactive. Darius Davis for the Chargers is doubtful with a hamstring injury. If he can't go, either Brendan Rice or Simi Fehoko might end up being in the huddle for some snaps by default. Quentin Johnston is doubtful with an ankle injury. It looks like Josh Palmer is the only Chargers wideout you can count on to start today in fantasy football. Jalen Johnson and Jalen Reagor were both elevated from the practice squad this week. Ladd McConkey, also a receiver for the Chargers, listed as questionable with a hip injury. You got multiple tight ends questionable. You got 5 different receivers inactive or doubtful today for the Chargers. It's going to be a tough uphill battle for LA today, at least on offense in terms of weapons for quarterback of the Chargers. As we moved on to Vegas, Aiden O'Connell out with a thumb injury. Quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders, Jacoby Myers, is questionable with an ankle injury. Derek Carr of New Orleans is doubtful with an oblique injury. Cedric Wilson Jr. of New Orleans is out with a hip injury. DK Metcalf is doubtful for Seattle with a knee injury. And Jaden Daniels is questionable with a rib injury. Yes, Justin Herbert is who I was talking about, obviously, for the Chargers. That's how much I pay attention to Chargers football. Oh, blanking on a name. Hate blanking on names in the middle of injury reports. But that's the latest look at who is active and inactive this week for Week 8 of the NFL Sunday. We are going to preview NFL Sunday when we come back as we continue and roll on the Braden Surprenant Show. Each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97 through the Fan. NFL Sunday, Week 8. That's what it is. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning, talking some NFL football with you to get you a preview of today's games. Cue music. Except for you on YouTube. That's not allowed to hear it. Let's talk about some NFL Sunday. Cincinnati and Philadelphia. We'll start off our slate of our preview at 10 in the morning, coming up on CBS. Cincinnati is favored by 2.5 going into this game. The over-under is 47.5. Storyline to watch for the Eagles. Rushed the ball combined 81 times over the past 2 games, 10 more than the next closest team for 385 total yards. Saquon Barkley is second to only Ravens' Derrick Henry in rushing yards per game and is coming off a 176-yard performance against his former team, the New York Giants. Cincinnati has yielded 136 rushing yards per game and has given up the second most rushing first downs of 65 this season. Rushing game for the Eagles. As for the Bengals, offense is looking to rebound after a rough couple of weeks. Back-to-back wins, the Bengals have scored touchdowns on 16.7% of their drives, which was half of the team's rate from weeks 1 through 5. Philadelphia's defense ranks 10th in fewest points allowed per drive. Stat to know today. Since 2022, the Eagles' A.J. Brown and Bengals' Jamar Chase are among the top 4 receivers in receiving yards after contact. Chase leads with 452. A.J. Brown has 394. As we picked on the Andy and Elston show, bold prediction by ESPN.com, the Bengals will win by more than 7 points. Cincinnati has by far the best passing offense in this game. Plus, it's going to need more than a blowout over the Giants to be convinced that the Eagles are back, says Walder of ESPN.com. I will buy his bold prediction. I think the Bengals win today. I think the Bengals cover the 2.5. I think the Bengals will win by 7 points. Rolling with the Bengals. Fantasy X Factor, according to ESPN.com. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow started the season with an 8 fantasy points in week 1 against the Patriots. Since then, he's averaged 21 fantasy points per game. Eagles defense held Daniel Jones to just 5.9 points in week 7 and Deshaun Watson for 8.4 in week 6. But it will face a tougher challenge against Burrow, Chase, and not really T. Higgins, though. So we'll see what Joe Burrow's got without T. Higgins this afternoon. Ravens at Browns, or at least afternoon on the East Coast, this morning. Ravens at Browns. Ravens are favored by 8. I like the Ravens in this game. See what Jameis Winston has. He's taken over a quarterback for the Browns in place of injured Deshaun Watson with an Achilles injury, and the change should lead to a more aggressive passing game. Watson's 6.9 air yards per attempt, ranked 23rd in the NFL, while Winston has averaged 10.1 air yards per attempt in his career. That could help to exploit a Ravens defense that has given up a league-high 20 receptions of at least 25 yards this season. Derrick Henry on the other side, though, NFL's rushing leader, goes against the Browns defense that has not allowed a running back to gain more than 67 yards this season. So you have Derrick Henry, top rusher in the league, going against the Browns' top rushing defense in the league, and you got Jameis Winston going against a Ravens defense that not too great against the pass, and Jameis likes to throw the rock. So maybe it's closer than the Baltimore by 8 points. I think Baltimore wins this game, but I don't think they cover anymore. Browns make it close. It's a divisional game. I'll take the Browns plus 8. Bold prediction on ESPN.com. Winston will be sacked at least 5 times, but also throw for 2 touchdowns. I'm buying that. Jameis getting pressed into action, might score in some trash time to keep the game close, but at the same time, it might be a rough afternoon for Jameis Winston out there in Cleveland. Other games in the morning slate. Titans at Lions. The beloved Lions of the Andy and Elston show, favored by 11 in this one. It's hard to cover 11 points. Will Levis is not playing for Tennessee. We'll see what Mason Rudolph has. But even with a 5-1 record, the NFC North leading Lions aren't taking the 1-5 Titans lightly. Tennessee has won its previous 6 games against the Lions, and Coach Dan Campbell has urged his team not to succumb to a potential trap game. Detroit will be without Jamison Williams while he serves a 2-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing substance policy. Titans are giving people fits, man, and they've had a fast start in all of their games, and they just haven't quite been able to close it out, Dan Campbell said. So Dan Campbell's worried about the Titans. Maybe it's just play to get his players going. Titans aren't a very good football team, but because of that and how difficult it is to cover 11 points, I think the Titans cover the 11, but I think the Detroit Lions win. Bold predictions, Titans will not score a touchdown. I will sell that. I think they do score a touchdown. I think Calvin Ridley scores a touchdown. D-Hop's not there anymore. Need a weapon. Maybe Calvin Ridley will finally get the ball as much as he has been asking to get the ball in Tennessee. Titans are 1-5 against the spread this season, 0-4 against the spread against teams with winning records. I think that changes today. Cardinals at Dolphins. Dolphins are favored by 3.5. Tua is back. Tua has been active for the game. He's been activated for the game. Cardinals are riding high after beating the Chargers on Monday, but there's an eagerness in the locker room to see if they can put all the pieces together for a second straight win. They've alternated losses and wins since week 4, so some stability in the win column would be welcomed. But with cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting and Max Melton out because of neck injuries, Arizona might be in for a long day against Miami's receiving core of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and their quarterbacks back. Speaking of the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, he's eligible to return for Sunday's game. He is active today for the Dolphins. Expect him to play for Miami. Should provide an immediate spark to the NFL's worst scoring offense. At least Tyreek Hill seems to think so. League's leading receiver from a season ago said the band is back and urged fantasy owners to start him this week. A little bit of an injury for Tyreek Hill, but he is active, ready to go. Him and Waddle with Tua. Offense is back. The boys are back in town. The band is back together. This might be a shootout between Arizona and Miami. Bold prediction, teams will combine to score more than 60 points. I'm buying that. Cardinals have had one of the worst defenses in the National Football League and will face the Dolphins offense with their quarterback back and their receiving core. Plus, the Cardinals defense is missing 2 of their cornerbacks. This might be a lot of points. X factor for all you fantasy owners out there, Devon Achane, Dolphins running back, finds himself in a great position against Cardinals defense that allows the 7th most rushing yards per game to running backs. Expect him to be heavily involved as both a runner and a receiver. Devon Achane. Jets at Patriots. Anybody watching this game? Patriots 1-6 on the year. Jets are 2-5. Jets need a win so bad. They made all these changes. They got rid of Robert Saleh, who's now in Green Bay as an assistant, some type of assistant to Matt LaFleur. But they could use a win bad. Jets are favored by 7 at the Pats. Patriots have been so bad all year. Another week, another big-name debut. This week, it's Hassan Reddick, who ended his holdout and probably will be used as a situational rusher for the Jets. Jets bolstered the roster the past 2 weeks with Reddick and Devontae Adams, but the game could come down to Aaron Rodgers. He had 6 picks in the last 3 games, the most in any 3-game stretch in his career. As for the Patriots, I don't even know where to begin with the Patriots, but they haven't been swept by the Jets since the 2000 season, which was Bill Belichick's first as a head coach. After losing 24-3 to the Jets in Week 3, Patriots are at risk of having that streak snapped. Rookie quarterback Drake May, who's making his 3rd career start, has been a bright spot. He could become the first rookie quarterback with at least 240 yards passing and 2 touchdown passes in his first 3 starts since 1950. I thought Drake May was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in this year's draft. Didn't get a lot of action early on in the season, but now he is pressed into action. And he is the 4th Patriots quarterback to make one of his first 3 career starts against the Jets. Previous 3, Mac Jones, Matt Castle, and Scott Zolak. And they all won. So let's see if Drake May has that. Buy or sell, Hassan Reddick will record a sack in his Jets debut. I can see that. When guys get activated for the first time, they usually make a big play. I'm taking the Jets. I don't think they cover. I think it's close. And I will buy the bold prediction from ESPN.com. Falcons at Bucks. Atlanta's favored by 2.5. Falcons' biggest albatross is still their pass rush. They also haven't been very good against the run, especially with Nate Landman and Troy Anderson both missing time. Atlanta's 28th in the league in run stop win rate. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers are 9th in the NFL in run block win rate. opening up holes for Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and Sean Tucker, or what Falcons coach Raheem Morris has referred to as the three-headed monster the Falcons have. As for the Bucs, doomsday scenario for Tampa. They're down to two-star wide receivers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Both are inactive. And what feels like a must-win game for the NFC South lead after dropping a Week 5 heartbreaker to Atlanta. Can't get swept by the Falcons this year if you want to potentially win the NFC South. Baker Mayfield and the ground game need to be near perfect, while the defense needs to shore up the middle of the field and cut down on missed tackles, according to ESPN.com. But here's what you got in Tampa. You got Sterling Shepard starting. You got Jalen McMillan starting. You got to rely on your tight end and Otto. It is a put together, hanging by the seams for Tampa right now in the receiving room, and it's Week 8. It'd be remarkable if they're able to get the win, but we'll see what happens in that one. Packers at Jags. Packers are 5-2. Jaguars are 2-5. Green Bay's favored by 3.5 in this game on the road. I like Green Bay in this game. I think they cover. They're playing really good with Jordan Love back, and he hasn't even been playing too much this year after suffering that injury at the beginning of the season. Trevor Lawrence had not been very good in his last couple of weeks. Finally be able to beat the Patriots last week as they stayed 2 weeks in London to get that victory. They're back in Jacksonville. Buy or sell the bold prediction from ESPN.com. The game will be tied at some point in the fourth quarter. I'm selling that. I think the Packers go down and beat their ass. The Jaguars are not good. Trevor Lawrence has not been good this season. I mean, he had the longest, losing streak for a period of time right there, dating back to last year before he got the 2 wins this year. I don't see it happening. Fantasy X Factor, Jaden Reed. Disappointing Week 7, putting up just 3 fantasy points against the Texans, but don't let that performance overshadow his recent success. He had been a go-to target for Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. I think the Packers roll over the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Colts at Texans. This is a big matchup in the AFC South. Houston's favored by 5. Anthony Richardson has had his struggles, but he has enjoyed more success against Houston than any other team. In 6 quarters of action against Houston, dating back to last season, Richardson is responsible for 5 total touchdowns, 3 rushing and 2 passing, averaged 9.2 yards per pass attempt and 10.1 yards per rush, quarterback rating of 90.1 in those games. Maybe that is the juice that the Colts need against Houston. Houston coming off a tough loss last week in Green Bay. Stat to know, Texans have swept the season series against the Colts only once in franchise history. That was 2016. Try to do that for the second time in franchise history. Buy or sell bold prediction from ESPN.com. Colts receiver Alec Pierce will have a 40-plus yard reception. Guy's really good at getting those. No wide receiver is, on average, further downfield than Pierce. He runs deep all the time. He's bound to catch at least one ball. I will buy that bold prediction. Afternoon slate, Saints at Chargers. Chargers are favored by 7. They got nothing on offense right now. I went through the actives and inactives. I mean, Johnston's doubtful. They got multiple tight ends out. McConkey is questionable. I mean, multiple receivers are questionable. Justin Herbert's going to be in for a tough afternoon. Saints don't have a lot of good. They got some players back, but they're banged up as well. It's going to be the skeleton squad game between the Saints and the Chargers on Halloween week. Buy or sell, bold prediction, J.K. Dobbins will surpass 100 rushing yards. I can see that. They don't really have too many threats right now in the passing game with guys that are active and ready to go. I'll take the Chargers by 7 at home. Bills at Seahawks. Buffalo's favored by 3 in this game on the road. I'll take the Seahawks in this one. It's a tough travel for the Buffalo Bills. Bold prediction, Dalton Kincaid will record 6 or more receptions. I can buy that. I'll buy that for Buffalo. Panthers at the Broncos. Panthers, another team that's got nothing right now offensively. A lot of players inactive today for the Carolina Panthers on offense. Broncos are favored by 10. Haven't really looked too great this year, but the last couple of weeks have been able to put it together, and they're now sitting at 4-3, 10-point favorite. I think the Broncos handle the the Panthers at home at Mile High. Buy or sell, bold prediction. Panthers will fail to cross into plus territory in the first half. I'm totally buying that. You got Deontay Johnson's out. You got Adam Thielen's out. Bryce Young is starting at quarterback because Andy Dalton has a bad thumb after being in a car accident. I don't see the Panthers being able to move the ball too much today against the Denver Broncos, who have had a pretty good defense all year. Chiefs at Raiders. It's always a fun matchup. I want to watch they have the Chiefs storyline and Raiders storyline to watch. My storyline to watch is Max Crosby going against Patrick Mahomes. That guy swims in Mahomes' head. Mahomes has nightmares about Max Crosby, even though the Chiefs tend to beat the Raiders more times than not. That's what I'm watching. I'm watching Max Crosby going against Mahomes and seeing him and getting that extra push every single time. Stat to know, speaking of Max Crosby, generated 36 quarterback pressures in his career against Mahomes, which is the most by an opposing defender against the future Hall of Famer. Bold prediction, DeAndre Hopkins will catch a touchdown pass. I will buy that. I said that earlier with the Jets. Players being activated, new homes, first time playing, usually make a big impact play. Bears at Commanders. Bears are favored by 3. Jaden Daniels seen walking into the building, signing autographs. There's a question whether or not he will play. We'll probably get a more designated sense on that as the 1 o'clock games approach. Cowboys and Niners are your night game. Niners are favored by 4. Niners have not been playing very well. Neither have the Cowboys. Major difference than from a couple of years ago when both teams seemed like were on the top of the NFC. Previous meetings with Dallas, Niners have kept Dak Prescott at bay. He's got a quarterback rating of 41.6 in those games. Niners ain't afraid of Dak. We'll see what happens in the night game, but I don't think it's going to end well for the Cowboys. I'll take the San Francisco 49ers. That's a look at all the games today on Sunday. I'm Braden Surprenant signing off. Talk to you tomorrow on Annie and Elston and on America's Finest Football Show tomorrow night, talking high school football throughout San Diego County. That'll do it for me. Thanks again for listening to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each every Sunday morning from 8 to 10, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.